All right, looks like I got 7:01, so we're gonna fire right off here. Welcome to everybody tonight. Thanks for taking a little time out of your Sunday evening to join us. Hopefully, you'll find this valuable, the time that you spend with us, and gonna find good benefit for doing some of these quick hitter sessions as we move forward. If you joined us this previous Wednesday night, Jared and I went through the kind of geared towards the first and second year officials. There was some valuable stuff shared there. We're seeing different correspondence coming from the State High School League now. I assume that'll pour in over the next few days, along with the Zoom meeting that they're putting on and hosting tomorrow night. So we're going to strongly recommend that everybody tries to sign on and watch that, because a lot of the COVID questions will get answered tomorrow night for that Zoom meeting. And then coming up on Wednesday night, a little bit of what we talk about tonight for legal guardian position verticality will tie in. Jared and I are going to go through the restricted art. Hopefully have a few plays to share with for that for Wednesday night. And then next Sunday night, Kevin Swan and MJ Wagonson have been gracious to lead up off-ball officiating. And we'll be able to talk about that. And then there's a few more on the docket for later, but we kind of left them out there for now, just to kind of get a few games and hopefully some plays behind us as well. So with that, again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Just a couple things on Zoom etiquette. Go ahead and make sure you're muted. And secondly, we're going to ask you just to drop your visual tonight as well, because we're going to show some plays and that'll help out with bandwidth if you would do that. Jared is going to monitor the chat session throughout the course of the session here, answer any questions via the chat, submit them there as well. And then we'll pause every couple slides and Jared will be able to jump in and see anything that we want to discuss. So without further ado, Eric Rain has decided to join me tonight and help me along on this adventure. And we'll get going here. Couple things, just an outline. We're going to talk through some rules knowledge on legal guardian position and verticality, its importance, some of the differences that are between legal guardian position, a player with the ball, without the ball, and a stationary player. And then a little bit of the decision-making process. Some other people might call it like a decision-making tree as it pertains to legal guardian position. Have a few final thoughts, a question and answer session, obviously throughout, and any at the end before we say goodnight. And then we'll see some plays as well. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, see if I can manage doing that without too many errors. I usually seem to goof things up every once in a while, so bear with me here. All right, Eric, am I good? Can you see it?
Looks good.
All right. So as I said, we're gonna just touch base on some legal guardian position stuff tonight and verticality. So with that, legal guardian position, what do we need to know and why do we need to know it? Well, without having a good baseline and a good rules knowledge, it'd be tough for us to adjudicate properly a lot of plays that we look at and that we see. Without this foundation, we'll have some inconsistencies in our application of the rules, which can cause some confusion amongst the crew, definitely frustration from the coaches, and then even that potential bewilderment that we might see from a player from time to time when you got an inconsistent crew and misapplication of rules. You know, we've all seen that look when we try to explain something to a player about being legally established, if they were or if they weren't. It's kind of that deer in the headlight look. We've all seen it. You know, you're trying to explain it to them, they have that little kink in the neck where they look off to the side. We've all been there. So if we're inconsistent with our rule knowledge or rule book, how can we expect the coaches to teach their players the proper way to play the game? So just getting into the rule book, Rule 423.1 tells us about guarding. And the guardian is the act of legally placing the body in the path of an offensive opponent. There's no minimum distance required. And frankly, every player is entitled to a spot on the floor, provided they get there first without illegally contacting an opponent. And a player who extends an arm, a hip, a shoulder, a leg into that path of the opponent is considered to be not in legal guarding position. So you know, we sometimes hear fans and others that maybe don't know the rules as well, which can be contrary to our public opinion, not thinking that everybody's entitled to a spot on the floor. But frankly, if they get there first and they get there without creating any contact, they're legal. But we do need to remember that that legal spot on a playing floor is constantly changing throughout the game because we have players moving to and fro at all times, and the ball is in the midst of that as well. Moving on to our next slide. Get there. Next one, how do we obtain initial legal guarding position? Well, we have to have both feet on the playing court. Front of our torso or our body needs to be facing the opponent. That's it. Simple as that. Pretty easy. But once we've established it, then we have some things that we need to do to be able to maintain that legal guarding position. Take, for example, a tight play along the sideline. If you officiated for any time, we've all been there. That defender gets to that spot just short of contact out near the sideline, got both feet on the floor, AKA legal guarding position, as we call it. And then you have that dribbler that attempts to get around them. A legally established defender, I should say, attempts to get around them towards the sideline. Defender, you know, shuffles their feet towards the sideline. They might have a foot out of bounds. They might not have a foot out of bounds. That's something that we have to rule on. So looking down under 423.3, talking about once we initially have legal guarding position, what a player has to do or can do. They can move one or both feet on the court, be airborne, and provided that they continue to maintain that inbound status. So going back to my example earlier, that tight play along the sideline where we had that defender get to the spot first, both feet on the floor, facing the dribbler. The dribbler tries to dribble around them. If that dribbler is near the sideline and their foot happens to be maybe above the out of bounds line, but it's not touching out of bounds, by definition, they're still a legal defender. If for some reason they step out of bounds, now we know that they've changed their status to out of bounds and they can't be legal anymore as a guarding in that guarding position. Moving on to B, once we've established initial legal guarding position, a guard is not required to continue to face an opponent. So think of a play down the middle of the lane where a ball handler dribbler tries to dribble past a initial legal guarded player, defender. They shuffle, they move laterally or obliquely, and then at the last second, they take a pull-up jump shot. Well, that defender is going to start positioning for a rebound. By definition, they're not now facing that opponent, and we have some contact. That legal guarded, stumbling on my words here, that initially legal guarding position that defender had, by definition, if we're looking at letter B there, tells us that they are still considered legal, even though they're not facing that opponent. Letter C, a guard can move laterally, obliquely. And what is that? Laterally is towards the side, obliquely is backwards at an angle. Letter D, guard may raise their hands and jump within their vertical plane, straight above their head. And we'll have a little discussion later about what is vertical as far as in your vertical plane. And then the last one, letter E, a guard may turn to duck or absorb imminent contact, and that quite often is witnessed or observed from when a possible block charge play is going to happen, where a guard might turn and absorb contact from that player. So just kind of rehashing what we said here, there's some different rules that can come into play, but just different things to keep in mind. Eric, I believe I had you for the next slide. Isn't that correct?
Yep. And this next slide will answer Jim Fall's question about time and distance for establishing. Time and distance come into effect on a moving opponent without the ball, which is the second part of the slide, but we'll go through 423.4, an opponent with the ball or a stationary player without the ball. There is no time and distance required for your legal guarding position. It's just as simple as the rule states: 2 feet on the floor, torso facing your opponent, and you're legal. With a stationary, think of it like a screen inside the visual range of an opponent. As long as you stop short of contact for that screen and they can see you, there's no time and distance for that legal screen. Same thing with an opponent with the ball or without the ball. The only caveat is if that opponent with the ball is airborne, you must have gotten to that spot on the floor before they went in the air, i.e. you see there, no slide under. So if they're in legal guarding position before they go airborne, they can move, i.e. you get we've all heard it, wasn't set. I don't care if they're set. Were they legal before they went airborne? Yes. Can they move laterally obliquely? Yes. Now, there's a little more to that, but it's, knowing if they got legal before the offensive player got airborne is the key there. Now we get to Jim Fall's question, 423.5 about time and distance. This only comes into play on an opponent without the ball. Time and distance are factors, speed of play. If you have a player at a light jog, their 2 strides are going to be a lot different in length than a player running full speed. So the 2 strides here is going to be up to your judgment factor on how fast that opponent was running. But you must give time and distance to avoid, no more than 2 strides of speed. And again, same as 423.4. If the opponent's airborne, a guard must have attained legal guarding position before the floor. The example there would be, say you're in a full court press situation and they make a long flat pass and the offensive player goes in the air to catch the ball. That defensive player, if they know they can't steal the ball, but they try to slide under for a charge, they need to be there before that opponent without the ball goes airborne to catch the pass. So just keep that in mind. There's your two different factors. If it's with the ball or stationary, time and distance are not a factor. The only time it is on an opponent without the ball. Then you need 2 strides based on how fast that opponent's moving, and time and distance to avoid contact. So we can go to the next slide. And
let's just pause here for a second. Jared, anything that you want to bring up? Any questions that are we answering as they're coming in? What do we got?
Yeah, 2 things. I'm gonna just be careful on that hole with 2 strides. If they're walking, it's not 2 strides. If they're not moving, it's not 2 strides. It's a max of 2 strides. Okay, so once again, that's that judgment factor that Eric talked about. It's a max of 2 strides. That would be at full speed. The other point I'll make, and I'll be quiet, remind people on legal guarding position, head and shoulders past. So the head and shoulders of the offense is past the defense. Now that onus is on the defense. If you want to talk to that a little bit, Tristan, that came in on a private chat from MJ to me.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, that has to do when legal guarding position would therefore cease, and the onus of the contact would be on the defender. As soon as a ball handler dribbler would get their head and shoulders past the torso of the defender, i.e. the hips, majority of the body, as soon as they get head and shoulders past, and that defender then would pivot, if you will, and slide towards the ball handler dribbler and create contact, the onus of that contact would be on the defender. Similarly, just like in a full court press situation or that play where a defender loses a step and they are trailing up the court behind the point guard for team A, the defender is coming from behind, and sometimes you'll see that ball handler dribbler or that point guard stop all of a sudden. Well, we all know all that contact is on that defender that's trailing from behind. Same principle there. Does that kind of answer that, Jared?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, anything else, Eric, on this slide before we move on to the next?
No, and one more slide. You backed up on there.
Yep,
So
I got her.
perfect. So why is legal guarding position so important? It's the basis for most of our decision making as officials on the court. With 10 players constantly moving and changing where their legal spot on the floor is, if we can't determine and in a very quick manner determine if a player is legally in their spot or not, we're going to struggle to adjudicate the rules and determine fouls and non-fouls and legal. So it's a key factor for 5-second closely guarded. If they didn't establish legal guarding position, you probably shouldn't have a 5 count. And we looked up the rules on this. Once they're legally guarding, as long as they maintain that 6 feet, they can, and as Tristan alluded to earlier, they can turn their back to the opponent. But as long as they maintain that 6 feet and establish with torso towards, you should still have a 5 count until that 6 feet is broken, or like we just talked about, head and shoulders get past that defensive player going towards a basket. Okay. And then the other thing that will kind of go into the second part of our presentation is you can't really apply your verticality principles without legal guarding position. If a player jumps straight up in the air, their hands above their head, A to B, but they didn't get to their spot on the floor legally, then your verticality principles on that contact don't really apply because they were in a spot where they couldn't legally be anywhere. Kind of like we talked about earlier, a player sliding underneath of an airborne player. That's pretty much all I had for that. If we want to go to the next one.
Yeah, one thing I was just going to jump in here and add to was that closely guarded thing. I guess it'd be bullet point number 2 there in the middle. Yeah, we probably wouldn't be very popular if we start calling closely guarded counts if the defender is got their back to the ball handler dribbler. But just as long as we as officials understand and know that it is a possibility in some rare situations where they might have, lost a step or kind of tripped on their foot or whatever might have happened to cause that to happen, we do know that by definition it could still happen. Now, I'm not advocating that we're going out and calling all 5-second counts when they're got their back to the ball handler dribbler, but it could happen in some different situations. And it's just good that we all know it is a possibility. And
I see Jared mentioned there in the comments, some keys for you when you're trying to figure out your 6 feet closely guarded on the court. The 10-foot attack line for volleyball to the 3-point line would be 6 feet. I believe the jump circle to that 10-foot attack line would be 6 feet. And then Roy Schroeder there, nice note for everybody. It is front foot to front foot. And then two spots on the lane line would also be 6 feet as well. So.
Yeah, and with that, we basically in the high school game, our hands should be moving quite a bit. Frankly, 6 feet in basketball is quite a distance, and quite often the defenders are within that 6 feet. So a reminder with that is if we start with our right hand counting for a held ball situation, and then they switch over and start dribbling, then we have to switch our hand or our count to our other hands. We alternate them. So if it's a holding, we'd be right hand, potentially switch a dribble to left hand, and if they hold it again, we'd go back to our right hand. So just a reminder there that anytime we switch the style of closely guarded, holding or dribbling, we need to switch our hand that we're counting with. All right, on to verticality, Eric.
Yeah, so the second part of this presentation is verticality. Why is verticality so important? Along with legal guarding position, it's one of the most important tenets of basketball officiating. It applies on so many different plays: block charge, rebounding, screening, shooter protection, shooter extending a hammer arm to clear out a legally established defender, playing legal defense. Now we have also in the arc play, if a player's there in the arc, they can jump and stay in their vertical plane. So we have to be able to know that for arc plays as well.
And we actually have a great clip coming up that actually demonstrates that.
Yep. One thing with verticality, anybody that's had a evaluation on a game, Have you ever heard you didn't get your hand straight above your head when you called your violations and fouls? Um, Physically, if you think about it, how hard is it if you just raise your hand straight up above your shoulders and keep them perfectly vertical? We do need to allow a little bit of in front of, a 5, 10, 15-degree angle is still within that vertical plane. You start getting much past that, and 45-degree angle is definitely not in a vertical plane and not legal. So just some things to keep in mind there. Just from the physical nature of our biology, it's really hard to stay straight above your shoulders. So just be aware of that. And just remember, verticality doesn't factor in if they're not legally to a spot on the floor. If they have LGP and verticality exists, it's a legal play. If not, you're probably ruling against the defense if you have a foul. Okay.
And speaking to that a little further, I would say for those people that have officiated with me, verticality is probably mentioned every single pregame of every game I officiate. And I assume for a lot of people are probably nodding their heads right now, like, yep, we talk about it. And so it's definitely something to discuss and make sure that the crew going into the game at least has an understanding of it. Speaking to what Eric just said, yeah, I have yet to see a defender be able to play defense with a 0-degree angle, but we need to at least be consistent as our crew and have a discussion on verticality before we go out on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you look at as a defender, most of the rules in the rule book apply to what we're going to rule the defense did. Outside of player control, illegal screens, stuff like that. Most of our rules are written to know if a defender broke verticality and legal guarding position. So you have to give them a little bit of leeway because there's so many things they can't do and there's very few they can. And if we start nitpicking that 0-degree angle, it's going to get very frustrating for them.
I moved on to the next slide for you there, Eric.
Yep. So what is verticality according to our rule book? Rule 445, Articles 1 through 4 define verticality. Legal guarding position, as you said earlier, has to be attained, and movement thereafter shall be legal. For just like we said, must have LGP to get to verticality. From legal guarding position, the defender may raise or jump vertically and occupy the space within his or her vertical plane. We'll have a clip on this later too, where you've seen the big post player jump with 2 hands above the head, and the offensive player goes around him. The last second they decide they're going to swat it, and they drop their hand off to the side. That's not staying in that vertical plane as they describe here in Article 2 and 3. And then Article 4, defender should not be penalized for leaving the floor vertically or having his or her hands and arms extended within his vertical plane. When those arms come down or move and infringe on the offensive player's territory, you can be confident there was probably a foul, just like we were talking about. But as a crew, we need to be on the same page, have a good pregame, talk about letting players make plays. And their nice comment from Broadwater, if their hands come down, know why they come down. If you're in legal guarding position and an offense player barrels into your chest and makes your arms come forward, we probably need to have a play on or an offensive foul. If the legal defender loses their ability and their legal spot on the floor because they were contacted by the offense, it'd be really hard to punish the defense there and feel good about it.
Let's let Jared catch up. Jared, what you got for questions? Anything that's popping up there that you want to mention before we move on to the next?
I have no questions. David brought up the one that I wanted you to talk about. Could one of you demonstrate that maybe in front of your screen by showing your hands vertical and taking contact in the chest and what happens naturally to your arms overhead, just so people can see that?
Yeah, can you see me or do I got to stop sharing here to do that?
I can still see you.
Oh, perfect. All right.
The arms are up.
What's that?
They're going to go forward. They're going to go towards in front of the head.
When you get hit here in the chest, if you get hit, then your hands are going to come down. Am I showing it? Can you see me? No?
Yep.
Okay.
Looks good. Everybody else is muted. I keep forgetting that. So,
Yes.
yeah. So just remember, if we can keep an eye and constantly, and this is a Jared Butson thing, as you're officiating the game, you're looking at the player and going legal, legal, legal. If you stop saying legal, but it's because contact by the offense, what did the defense do wrong? Penalize the offense there. If at any point on the defender's own volition, no contact from the offense, the defender is legal, 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 not legal, then when you hit the whistle, it should be defensive foul.
Perfect. All right, moving on. I'll jump in here again for some contact stuff. We all know that contact is part of the game of basketball. We know it's our job as officials to help determine what type of contact's legal, illegal, and what's incidental. Well, we got to use the rules to determine legal guarding possession and verticality. That can help us also determine between legal and illegal contact. Rule 427 helps talk a little bit about incidental contact, which is also very important for us. While some contact during the game truly can be incidental, an example of that would be that tipped ball, or you could say even after a long rebound, the ball gets tipped out near half court, and both two players or opponents are going after the ball in equally favorable positions. They dive for the ball, and their shoulders collide, and it's a pretty significant or sometimes even severe contact. I think that's the word they use in the rule book, is severe. That can still be ruled as incidental. So just something to think about. So just going through our quick definition here on 427 speaks to incidental contact. It's contact which is permitted and does not constitute a foul. Contact may result when opponents are in equally favorable positions, like I spoke to. It should not be considered illegal, even if the contact is severe. So the main questions we need to ask ourselves, who is creating the contact? Is it the ball handler? Is it the defender in the post? Is it the offensive post player backing down a defender? Is it the defensive post player putting a knee up the backside of the offensive post player to displace them? Cutter coming across the lane. Do we have a defender chucking that cutter with giving them a hip or a little bit of an arm, a chicken wing, as you might call it? Or is it the offensive cutter coming through and extending their hands or arms and pushing off of that defender to create some contact? And then, also in rebounding, we know positioning is very important in rebounding. And in a three-person game, we stress that we want our C and our T to be able to be the main rulers on rebounding contact. Two-person, maybe the trail a little bit more, but the way these games are going, everybody needs to be involved in rebounding contact in the two-person game. So,
and one thing there, Tristan, with rebounding, we've all seen the importance of the three-point shot become bigger and bigger at the high school level. A lot more teams are looking for that three-point shot. Verticality is a big deal there on rebounding, because as these long rebounds happen, you might have a player that is in front of their opponent and boxing out well and did everything right, but because of a long rebound, they start backing up because that ball is not going to be in their range. Well, don't punish the person that's behind them just because of a long rebound. Make sure on those plays you're watching to see who stayed in their vertical cylinder when they jumped to get the ball. Just because they got in what coaches would call good rebounding position in front of their opponent doesn't necessarily mean that you have a push in the back on the rebound. You see it more and more where the player on the backside will jump straight up and get undercut. And we need to make sure we're not allowing their legal position on the floor to be taken away by that inside rebounder.
Yeah. All right, move on to the next one. A couple slides left, and then we'll have any questions, answers, and then some slides just to kind of let everybody know. One last point maybe to talk about with contact too. This is kind of a takeaway from some of us that work college women's have heard it. But you'll hear the phrase rhythm, speed, balance, quickness, I believe we can apply that to the high school game as well. So if someone's rhythm, speed, balance, or quickness is being taken away, we need to know how or why that happened, and that can help us rule effectively onto some play calling as well. So a little bit into that decision-making process after we got our baseline knowledge on initial legal guardian position, maintaining it, talking about verticality, talking about incidental contact. So this kind of is our decision-making process or decision-making tree. Now, the first question we need to ask was legal guardian possession and verticality criteria met. If it's not, and we have a whistle on the play, the defense or the non-legal guarded player is probably the one that should or would be penalized if it is something other than incidental contact. If we end up answering the yes to that question that it was met, that criteria was met, did they maintain it and did they stay within their vertical plane? Did the arms stay at that 5-10 degree angle that we agreed upon as a crew? The feet, did they shuffle or move to the side or backwards at an angle obliquely? Did we have both feet down before a player was airborne? Obviously, that's very important. And then, the hips or the arms when they try to dribble around them, did they stay vertical or did they hip check them when they were trying to slide by them? So, the other key, last key piece that we can use in calling it is just having that consistency throughout the contest. If we have a 50-50 block charge play and we call the block in the game, and we need to do our best to call the other similar plays the same throughout the game, that's going to bode well for us as well. Anything else there, Eric?
No, it looks good to me. Does anybody have any questions on those? I don't see any in the chat, so I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. All right. So in summary, when we get out there and get officiated, we need to make sure that we're officiating with rules book knowledge and proper mechanics, not the catchphrases that we all hear from time to time from the rabid fan or a coach that's still learning the rules. The over the back, she was moving, they weren't set, that's a reach. The awesome one we all love, 3 seconds in the lane, that no one seems to understand. That can even happen in the college game. Heck, last week I was doing a game and I believe the Winona State bench was yelling for a closely guarded count in the front court when they were dribbling the ball. And the coach just looked at the bench, and I believe they're all freshmen, kind of gave them the old be quiet and probably educated them. That's not a rule in the college. So obviously we need to know our rules. So simply said, rules-based officiating determines our play calling. And we just need to ask ourselves who reached the spot legally first. And with that, I am ready to let us look at some clips. I will stop my share here, Eric, and you can get yours up.
Sounds good.
So while Eric's getting that up, keep in mind the video is all right. Hopefully everyone will get to have a good look at these tonight when we get them rolling. Some of these plays were taken from some college games, but the same principles and are still going to apply to our high school games. So anytime we can see some clips and learn from them, it's going to be a good thing. So Eric, I believe you have this first one here if you want to set it up.
Yep, just getting it loaded. So what we're going to have here on this play is 2 very quick turnovers and then a drive to the bucket. On the drive to the bucket, there's going to be a little bit of contact, and we're going to have a defensive player legally established outside our arc. And you see their offensive player initiates all the contact, but the small train lost in this collision. Offensive player goes to the floor and out of bounds.
Eric, just one thing, I think you'll have to run these a couple times just because they're a little slow. So that way, so just plan on running them a few times because it might jump in and out for some people.
Okay. So as we watch this, Officiating crew does a good job of staying with the play, eyes on the floor. We pick up the defense and know that we have legal guarding position. If you ever get caught in a spot where you see that turnover and you take that break and relax and aren't ready for it, the collision alone, if you don't pick up that defender's feet and know they're legally established beforehand, you could very easily have a blocking foul and put that offensive player to the line for 2 shots when the defense did nothing wrong.
Yeah, so in this clip, 50, number white, the big girl there underneath the lane is the one that was established.
Yeah, so good with that, on to the next.
I think so. On my end, I'm getting a little bit of, I get something goofy popped in there. So are these coming through, Jared? Can you speak and see if you're able to see them, or are they kind of choppy? How are we
Yeah, they're
seeing
very choppy. So going back to that one play there, okay, with the quick steal, you had number 50 white not in legal guarding position with a blocking foul called, correct?
No, incorrect. She actually was legal because she had both feet down on the floor facing the opponent.
Okay, so let that one play. Maybe just talk to that a little bit, because I sort of missed my punchline, if you will, with this one.
So right before contact, we have right there, as you see, it's paused. Defensive player 2 feet on the floor, torso facing the opponent. We have LGP. All right. Crew did not bail out and start going the other way. We have up at the top left, we have our C in position, our leads right there. Great job. They see the defensive player is legally established before the player is gathered and trying to go airborne for the shot. We have the offensive player crash in, falls to the floor. Now, no offensive player control foul because the defense was never knocked off their legally established spot. Their rhythm, speed, and balance weren't affected, and they were able to maintain their ability to play defense. And kind of like we said earlier, severe contact doesn't necessarily constitute a foul. So good job there, legally establishing, and ball out of bounds, and we'll do a throw in here in a second. So.
All right, on to the next, Eric. I'll set it up. You just want to get it at the top of the key here.
One thing here, we need people to take down their video, okay? So with Jeff Johnson, you got to take down your video. Mark Turbala, Dave Benson, take down your video, please.
Yeah, thanks. I can't see that, Jared. I know I mentioned that at the beginning, but they might have joined late. So,
yep. So if you can take your video down, then that's going to help with the streaming here, hopefully.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and set this play up as we have it. Just leave it there, Eric, on pause. So what we got here basically is a one-on-one fast break situation. It's going to the rack. You got the new lead opposite on the top of the screen. Running down, you'll see the C on the bottom of the screen here as well. So their field of vision, where they should be looking, should already be directly ahead at the defender. Because the only question we need to know, or the main one we need to know, is this defender going to establish a legal guarding position if we do have any contact? So as we learned earlier and talked about, if we know they got 2 feet down facing the opponent, they have established legal guarding position. Time and distance is not required with anyone from that has the ball. They just have to be there short of contact. So go ahead and play it just to the top of the key, Eric, if you would, right when she starts and faces. And just pause it there again so people can see it right there. Thank you. Again, if these are choppy, it's our apologies. We're trying our best here, but at least we're being able to see some action. So this was a fast break down the court, and right where Eric has it paused here, the defender is already, prior to this dribble, I believe she already had her 2 feet facing the opponent. And then now she's going to shuffle and move a little bit laterally / obliquely. And one other thing in this, you'll see the RA is right below her. even if contact would occur in the restricted arc, we still can have an offensive foul here. As soon as we initiate legal guarding position outside of the arc, and it doesn't matter where that contact happens, we can still have an offensive player control foul. So go ahead and see if it'll play, Eric, and then just try playing it a few times.
Yep.
And yeah, just roll more.
Want one more?
Yeah, one more. Yeah, it's a little choppy, unfortunately. And we'll just have the remainder of the plays. We'll just have to do the same. It's just the nature of the beast tonight, the way it looks. So this was ruled a player control foul. Correct call by one of our esteemed colleagues who I believe is with us tonight, MJ. That was her as the new lead in that transition play. Those type of plays happen very, very fast. So again, our field of vision needs to be ahead of the play, looking at that defender, talking to ourselves. Legal, not legal. Those type of terms will help you get a solid foundation so we can get those plays right. Go ahead and move on to the next one, Eric.
All right, so this one, you see here, ball handler at the top of the key. We've already got legal defense established. 2 feet down, hand above the head in that 5 to 10 degree angle. So we have verticality as well. Torso is facing the ball handler dribbler. And we're going to have a drive towards the hoop here. Defense moves laterally. You'll see them move laterally and obliquely throughout this play. As we talked about earlier, the question was head and shoulders past torso. We're never going to get that. And so defense legally established stays in their vertical plane, and they're going to slide their feet laterally and obliquely and maintain position. And at the end, there's a shot attempt. They stay in their vertical plane and make a nice block. Good defense start to finish here. And it's a play on. There you see ball handler dribbler had head down, shoulder into the torso of the defender throughout the play. Try to get.
Yeah, while you're kind of doing that, maybe pausing it, Jared just sent to the chat there talking about the phrase that a bunch of us have heard, but maybe some of the younger officials haven't. You'll hear referee the defense. And basically that's just telling us that our first starting place to look is referee the defense. Talked earlier about moving our field of vision up front to the defender, wanting to know if they are getting established or legal. That's the term referee the defense. If we know what our defender is doing, if they're legal, we're gonna again be able to rule on these plays quite effectively and correctly. I think, Eric, what we'll have to do after this is done here, maybe we can send this to Nick Amento, and then he can have these clips up so everyone can watch them after the fact too on their own time, and they should be a lot smoother.
Yeah. So you see here, I got it paused. Head and shoulders of the offensive player have not got past the torso of the defense yet. So we're still in legal guarding position. We got the one hand vertically in our plane up above as the player is leaving the floor for the shot attempt. Make a tip, good defensive play. And this is one of those in a 3-person crew. It was a nice handoff play, originated in the trail, right at the top of the key, came around that corner, lead picked it up, and both officials saw it start to finish. And contrary to the opinion of the coach that day, it was good legal defense and just offensive player trying to create most of the contact that would be, as we talked about earlier, incidental.
All right, on to the next.
You want to set this up?
Yeah, I will. Just leave it here.
Okay.
So, again, another college clip. We got a few high school ones coming up here at the end. Here, this is another great example of never taking your eyes off the player. You never know where some contact might happen. Missing these type of plays or these type of calls, a game can get out of hand or escalate in a very quick manner. So just setting this play up here a little bit, you'll see the St. Mary's player is going to elevate here for a jump shot, and it will go in. And as she turns around and comes back up to the floor, technically the C who's on the other side of the floor is a little high, but I believe the lead had just come over shortly right before this. So that's probably why he was refereeing a little higher, because that ball handler dribbler started out. He just stepped up and out to the floor to get a better look. And then he's going to come in and rule on, which would now be a defensive foul, because White is going to create a contact with a player that's just on the floor and basically runs her over. So if you want to just kind of piece through it, Eric, so they can see the different spots of where it's happening, since our video isn't running the best. So there, right, yeah. Maybe stop it right after the shot goes in, and then we can see where those two players are at.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good spot. So if you look over on the, Eric's got his cursor there. The contact's going to occur between those two players. That's the girl that just made the shot, and the Bethany player there in black to the left is going to get run over, if you will.
So keep your eye here. I'll hit play. Back it up once more. I'll just go back to the start and I'll play it through one more time.
That stinks.
All right,
Stinks,
so this
stinks that the video isn't coming through for us, but
yeah. So this clip, sorry about that. This clip's just going to be real short and sweet. We got offensive player and defensive player. You'll see my cursor up here on the post. They come across the lane. They're both in legal position. Defense is behind as the entry pass. See the ball's right up here. Entry pass is coming in. Once that offensive player catches the ball, defense does a good job of getting vertical, hands above the head, and they stay within their plane. And then the offensive player is going to spin towards the middle of the lane and do a little up and under scoop shot for the bucket. Defense does nothing wrong and stays in their plane, and it's good defense, better offense, which is just part of the game of basketball, and everybody here does a good job. But it's just a good example of a defensive player staying legal in the post, hands above the head for verticality, and when that offensive player gets their head and shoulders past them on the inside spin scoop, they don't drop that arm down trying to block the shot. They just tip their hat, give up the bucket, and keep a foul off the board.
Tristan and Eric, can
Yes.
you go back to that play where we had the Bethany defender go down after the shot at St. Mary's would be to the right?
2 plays ago, yep.
Yeah. What was the call on the floor there?
I answered Kevin's question. There was a common foul. You could probably, parse through it and maybe say you could look at it intentional if that's where you're going with it. But it's tough to tell from this angle if she, lowered a shoulder or stuck the shoulder out, if you will. I believe they came out here with a common foul.
Thank you.
Well, and I'll comment a little farther for the question of why common foul or elevated. As soon as the whistle was put and called a foul, before the crew even had a chance to discuss maybe elevating to an intentional, both coaches met at the division line in front of the scorer's table. So we went from players on the floor being the issue to double technicals issued to the coaches who were bumping chests at the division line, which I think had that not happened and you gave the crew at least a moment to talk, there is a chance you would have elevated it, because clearly that player, when they turn to go up the court, you'll see here, they have time and distance to avoid contact and they bury the shoulder. But about, as you see the coach here on my cursor starts clapping, he's going to raise his hands in disgust, and the other coach is going to take exception to that and come to him if you have the whole game film on this one. So
yeah, I was hoping that MB was on here. I just looked through the participants. I don't see him because he was on that game. He would maybe be able to speak a little further to it. But yeah, what a situation, and how quick I can change the when you miss something like that. And of course, we can't control what the coaches do and how they react to calls we make. We just have to enforce the rules. So if they want to go out and get in a verbal disagreement and bumping chests, that's their choice. We just have tools in our tool belt to take care of it, i.e. technical fouls.
all right, Tristan, I think this is your play.
Yep. So I'll just pause it here and set it up. So you'll see lead on the top baseline there, about top end line. The C is on the bottom corner of the screen. Number 14, I believe, is got the ball in her hands right now as this is set up. She is going to dribble to her left and get around the primary defender that is got 2 feet on the floor facing her, so a legal guarding position. And then she's going to dribble to her left into the lane to attempt a floater. And that big girl, I can't see her number, that's standing in the middle of the lane right now, is going to break verticality, and a foul is going to be called by a lead for a verticality foul. So you want to walk through it, Eric? Go ahead. And maybe go back right to the contact. That might, at least they can see the verticality issue. And one other thing with this, so we talk about primary defenders, and you can pause it right there. Talk about primary defenders and secondary defenders. As soon as that ball handler dribbler got around the primary defender, who now has got her back to me, the lead then now picks this secondary defender up and has to rule on the arc on the floor. If they have both feet out of the arc to establish the legal guarding position. And of course, as we talked earlier, facing the opponent with the ball. Go ahead and see if you can get it where the contact occurs there.
Missed it by here. We'll start back over. So you see that left arm comes down. There's your verticality breaking.
Yep. So if we look at it, the torso is doing just fine. It has all to do about the arms that we talked about before, and that clearly is 45 degrees, if not worse. So good. I think, what do we got left, Eric? 2 more?
2 more. And this next one's short and sweet. You're going to see here, offensive player in the corner where my cursor is going to make a backdoor cut against the zone towards the block. You're going to see a secondary defender from somewhere in the lane slide down. They're going to get to the block at about the same time. They're both going to land on a spot legally, and then both jump vertically. Offensive player is going to go up, make the shot. Defensive player is going to get there, contest, hands in their vertical plane, and no breaking of the plane, and just good legal defense. Offensive player is allowed to make their natural movements, rhythm, speed, and balance, as we said, not affected, and just a good job by the defense of doing everything they could to contest the shot without committing a foul. So you see right there, they both landed. Offensive player catches the ball. I mean, there's no space in between them, but they're both able to elevate vertically, and so far nothing. And you see there, right before I pause it, that defensive player had both hands raised above the head, and just let the offensive player finish. I'll play it again from the beginning, and you can kind of see start to finish.
Yeah. And once you stop it right near when he catches it, Eric, if you can again. And again, our apologies for the video being the way it is. We're trying to work through it the best we can, but this would be another example of of incidental contact. Like Eric already alluded to, they're both to a position on the floor. Yes, there's no space, there's a little bit of contact, but both of them remained in their vertical plane. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Never trust a JV player videotaping a game on and one. All right, Tristan, last play, it's all yours.
Yeah, you bet. Last play of the night here, folks, and then we'll wind it up. So this is down at Lake City. Go ahead a little bit further, Eric, if you would. I'll set it up here. Yeah, it's really choppy on my end. I just get bits and pieces and a few. Yeah, right there is good. Thanks. So Lake City St. Charles game last year. You can see the Lake City, the bottom of the screen, number 3 there. Heisey has the ball, one of their better players from last year's squad. He's going to cross over here and dribble drive to the hoop. I believe that one of the defenders, I believe it's that one right there, thank you, is going to slide down and attempt to establish legal guardian position. You could argue that he did or he didn't. The end of this play here, both ends are, a lot more 50-50. We could probably sit and dissect this one for 20 minutes and still have a mixed crowd on how it turns out. But so what we're going to have here is he's going to drive to the hole, have a verticality play that is no called, and then have a quick turnover. He's going to miss the basket and an open layup down to the other end of the floor as well. And 34 is going to come down and again, not establish, or does he establish legal guardian position? Probably not. Down on the other end, you'll see it here in a minute, and then blocks the ball up high, and the St. Charles player is going to go down to the floor. So a lot going on here. We got verticality, we got guarding position, we have consistency as a crew. So go ahead and just play it through, Eric, and stop it where you think it needs to be stopped. Back that up there 1 second, Eric.
Yeah. You want down to the other end?
Well, yeah, you can go back. We'll see that again too. So bring it back down to the other end if you would. So right at the point where he our verticality, so we can just see the verticality on it.
Okay, I'll hit play and then pause it.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, I think you're seeing it at real speed, and the rest of us are seeing it at choppy speed. But the Pine Island defender, I'm sorry, St. Charles defender here does a great job of staying vertical. There's no issues there, and frankly, when I saw it for the first time, I thought it was a great no call. So why don't you take us down to the other end, and then we'll pause it so they can see it set up before the contact occurs there. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the St. Charles player that's right on the low block on the right side has the ball in his hands. He's going to go up for a layup. And then that's in the middle of the lane there for Lake City. That's number 34, Gassner. I think it's a great spot that you stopped at, Eric. We can clearly see that he did not establish legal guardian position because he's not in front of the opponent. He's not facing him. So the onus of all this contact would be on the defender. And then the next question is verticality, incidental contact. So one other element we might want to look at here as an official is the taking off point of the defender and the landing spot of the defender, because if they're going towards or stepping towards that offensive player, obviously we know that the onus would be on them, but those are other different things that we can use in our judgment as to if the defender called a foul. So go ahead, Eric. You might have to stop it again one more time down on the St. Charles end just to see, because
Okay.
it's really choppy here on mine.
Okay.
Could be because I live out in the sticks. I don't know. That's a possibility. That's a good spot. So we can see that Lake City 34 got up there and blocked the ball. We got a good block up top. The only question is, talking about starting point and ending point, is where did he start at? Did he continue to run, if you will, if you draw a straight line from the free throw semicircle straight down to the arc to the baseline? Did he stay in a straight line, or did he kind of veer towards the official on the bottom of the screen? I believe that's Broadwater, I believe. So if the defender is veering towards the official on the bottom of the screen, the new lead, then obviously he's not staying on a straight track. But if we're watching starting and landing points, he's in a straight line, that would be another element that we would probably use in our rule adjudicating that play. So Jared, you mentioned in speak to anticipate the play versus anticipating the call. Yeah, a great thing to kind of finish up here with is yes, we want to make sure that we are watching the whole play, being patient. I know when I was a younger official, and this still happens from time to time, we anticipate the play, what's going to happen before it happens, and then sometimes we end up incorrectly ruling on the play. So we want to make sure that we allow the play to happen before we anticipate what we're going to call. Eric, anything you want to jump in on with there?
No, good points. And another thing too, just looking at those clips, remember positioning on the floor. It's all about angles. Like that last clip we looked at, I guarantee we would have loved to have the camera angle when we were working that game. So when you get the ability to get game film and you start looking at it, don't look at just the play calls. Also look at where you are on the floor to maybe, if you feel like you missed one, find out why you missed it. Was it because you were in the wrong spot, or was it because on that particular night, on that particular play, it just, you weren't going to get the angle needed and the camera had the angle and you found out afterwards you were wrong. We're not ever going to be 100% on our rulings. But game film study, like we had a little bit tonight, you can learn what you didn't see and teach yourself, okay, where do I need to be on the floor so I can see what I'm missing on that play, and be more consistent on your rulings of verticality and legal guarding position.
Perfect. Yeah, so now with all of that, we should all be able to go out and nail the heck out of legal guarding position, verticality, not have any issues throughout the season. That's our hope anyways. I got nothing else. Eric, do you got anything else?
No, I think JB wants 30 seconds to discuss some things moving forward here.
Yep. Go ahead,
thanks,
JB.
guys.
The floor is yours.
Well, thanks, guys, for the presentation on legal guarding position. I'm going to share my screen. I reached out to MJ on this. Yeah, this was a discussion last Wednesday on throw-in spots. And right here shows the exact way that we want the throw-in spots, which that is going to include the key. And page 177 in the Mechanics Illustrated is incorrect, but this is the correct diagram. Now, how the heck did I get to this? Okay, let me show you. So I'm out on the central hub and I went to basketball, and there's all sorts of forms and resources here. And if you click right there in Minnesota Basketball and Mechanics Illustrated 2021 supplement, that's something that when I get near a computer, I'm going to print off and I'm going to put in my current manual. So you can see that there's a few items in there. There's, I don't know how many that is, but 10 copies. There it is right there at 11. So something to think about, because we talked about this last week. This is correct. And let's see here, get me out of this. And then the last thing that I have is that I have about an hour left of the schedule for January to finish up. I'm going to finish that as soon as I get off of the Zoom call, and then I'm going to hit publish before I go to bed. So you will see your assignments for January 14th through January 30th. I will follow that up with an email. This week, tomorrow night, a Minnesota State High School League Zoom meeting at 5:30. If you check your Arbiter emails, there's been several that have stated that you can register for that. It's about 30 seconds to fill out the registration, and then the Zoom link will be sent out by the State High School League shortly after lunch tomorrow. Zoom, or let's see what, quick hitter number 3, Tristan, is 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. So we got a couple more Zooms before we do this thing for real. That's all that I got.
There was a question in the chat on how we obtain the game film. I'll just touch on that real quick. Most of the game film we used tonight was from college games. They have their own internet service that we are allowed to go in and download our games after that. The high school game footage that we used, we just talked to the coaches or emailed them later on and asked them to email us a link to download it. Just some advice there. If you have a 1-point nail biter finish, give that coach a little bit of time to breathe. If they're on the losing end of that, before you talk to them, if you have a technical foul for misconduct in the game, be careful approaching a coach there. Just use judgment. But most coaches, they want to help us learn so that we can get better too, and they're more than happy if you reach out to them for finding game film. And there's tons of chats popping up. There's YouTube live feeds this year with COVID and limited fans that we'll be able to access. That's above my knowledge on how to get all that downloaded, but we have some tech savvy people in the association that probably help with that.
Yeah, I see Kevin Swan said he had a question. Do you have something there, Kevin? Do you want to just jump on?
I do. Can you hear me okay?
Sure. Yes.
All right. So maybe it's because I've had an hour to think about your great content, but one of your very first slides stressed that legal guarding position only needs to be obtained before the opponent with the ball has left the floor, right?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
And again, maybe this is just one where we all use our intuition, but it got me thinking about those tricky plays, and especially when you're watching, college ball on networks with super slow-mo. And I was trying to figure out, how do I explain this to a coach? But once you've established legal guarding position, you're allowed to move obliquely. So walk me through a hairy situation where a defender's guarding a driving ball handler. That ball handler, takes a step, goes up for their shot. Now, we know that you obviously can't slide way under that person after they've left, but sticking with the definition, it doesn't say that you can't continue to move obliquely even after that shooter has left the floor, if you follow me.
Yes. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to that last clip we looked at, in my opinion. I'll have Eric jump in here after I'm done with my little couple 2 cents. That if we can rule on their starting position and their ending position and what line that they are taking, that's number one going to help us. And then, you kind of answered your own question there, that yes, they are still entitled to move laterally and obliquely, and they're still continued maintaining their legal guarding position. So, they're tight plays, they're tough. And sometimes that can just be that incidental you can rule it as, or explain that it, ended up being just incidental contact at the end of the play. Eric, anything you want to jump in there?
Yeah, the play he's kind of describing, I have it in my head where offensive players driving for layup, they elevate, and then you're kind of saying the defender might slide underneath their landing spot. My guess is in my head, when I'm envisioning is the defender got beat on the drive to the bucket and head and shoulders are passed. Then you no longer have legal guarding position. Now they can't move laterally and obliquely. So if the offensive player gets their head and shoulders passed and takes away that legal guarding position, and then they slide into their landing spot, you would have a defensive blocking foul. If they don't get passed, then you're going to have just what looks to be like a more normal crash into a legal defender, and you'll be able to call the player control.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up, but I wasn't talking so much about a landing spot as in during the shot, during the drive. And again, maybe I'm just imagining something that in real life doesn't happen all that often, but it's tough to call a player control foul when the defender has slid across. You know what I mean? They're not staying put. And it's not during a dribble when it can still look ugly, but we feel more confident that we can call it as a player control foul because it's just a guy dribbling and a guy making contact. I'm talking about after the player has left the floor on a shot. I would find it really hard to call a player control foul if that defender has noticeably slid to the left or to the right, even though they're within their rights because they're moving obliquely, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I guess after you explain a little further, I get what you're saying. I think more often than not in those type of plays, we're ruling a lot of those as incidental contact, or we're calling a blocking foul. From the way that you described it further, I was able to envision a little bit better. Personally, yeah, it's either a blocking foul or it's incidental contact and we play on.
So not to make this a long call, but Travis, if you had to go to the coach and say why you would call it a blocking foul, what would your language or explanation be?
Well, I always try to use rule book knowledge as much as I can. So, coach, I had your defensive player or your defender move towards the player after they left the floor. That'd probably be my verbiage that I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
I used this one today on the Sioux Falls coach. Coach, your player didn't legally get to the spot before the shooter was airborne.
Yeah, but see, that's different. And again, if we were in a bar, I'd continue this, but that's the really of the language. It's, it's not about getting to a spot before they leave the floor, because the definition says, all that matters is you got LGP before they left the floor. So anyway, but
I know that you know that, but that's what I'd say to the coaches. They didn't legally get to the spot before they were airborne.
Okay.
Perfect. Did that help, Kevin? Was that able to?
It helps enough for now. Thanks.
Yeah, we can talk more about that more. And so Jared kind of alluded to Wednesday night. We'll be back on here for restricted art. Kevin and MJ graciously going to take next Sunday for off-ball officiating. And then we'll have some coming up a few weeks after that. So we get a couple weeks to get some games under our belt. So with that, no further ado, I am going to end this for us tonight. I appreciate everybody's time and attention, and we will try to get this all online, the presentation and the clips, so you can see them in real speed versus choppy speed as we had tonight. So thanks again. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.